queer people feeling isolated, invisible, and ashamed. The pride parades were themselves designed to help people overcome shame and build community, as well as to symbolize the movement's commitment to both. By 1994, several pioneering historical studies had already begun to undermine that popular narrative. They illuminated the fledgling homophile movement that had predated Stonewall by almost 20 years and helped make it possible, as well as the resistant lesbian butch femme bar world that claimed space in post-war cities. And they argued for the importance of the Second World War as a turning point in the building of urban gay communities a generation before Stonewall. Despite this, most people continued to believe that the LGBT political movement and the social world of gay bars, dance clubs, newspapers, bookstores, choruses, and the like emerged full-blown in the wake of Stonewall. And even among historians, a new consensus emerged that the Second World War played the catalytic role in transforming homosexuality from an individual to a collective phenomenon, and in launching the urban communities and struggles that would eventually pave the way for Stonewall. At the risk of raining on the 25th anniversary parade, I argued in Gay New York that this dim view of pre-Stonewall gay life was, indeed, a myth. Initially, I myself needed to overcome the power of that myth in order to make sense of the vibrancy, complexity, and visibility of queer life I was uncovering in my research. I still remember the shock I felt, verging on disbelief, when I looked at my research-filled index cards and a map of the Lower East Side spread out on my desk, in that pre-Zotero, pre-Google era, and realized that at the end of the 19th century, half a dozen degenerate resorts had stood on the streets close to Paresis Hall, the best-known such resort in the city, discussed in Chapter 1, and that both the police and neighborhood residents had been fully aware of their character. It matched the astonishment I later felt when I realized the Harlem drag balls I had compiled stories about, Chapters 9 and 10, attracted people from across the region, were known in Europe, and understood themselves to be part of a tradition of such balls beginning in the late 19th century and reaching into the 1930s, and, as I would later realize, had a direct connection to the ballroom scene that took shape in the 1970s and 1980s. The idea that people had remained isolated, ashamed, and invisible was so powerful that it would have been easy to view these events and spaces as exceptional and rare, rather than to see that, cumulatively, they provided evidence of what people in the 1930s were already beginning to refer to as a densely organized gay world, albeit one fractured along lines of race, class, citizenship, and gender difference and inequality. One of the tensions anyone who writes about queer history must grapple with is the need to convey both the extent of anti-gay policing and the resiliency of so many people in the face of that policing. In Gay New York, I provided detailed accounts of how state and municipal regulation served to constrain and penalize men who defied heteronormative orthodoxy. I charted, for instance, the development of ordinances and regulations prohibiting cross-dressing, cruising, portraying sexual perverts in plays and films, and employing or allowing the gathering of homosexuals in bars and other commercial meeting places. I paid even more attention to the everyday policing of gender and sexual nonconformity in the streets, where queers were most often confronted for violating social norms. But given the widespread assumption 25 years ago that anti-gay hostility had been inescapable and devastatingly effective in keeping people isolated and hidden, I stressed the counterintuitive scale of gay men's everyday resistance to such policing and their success in creating a rich and sustaining social world long before a formal political movement emerged. Now, 25 years later, the frame of reference has dramatically shifted for anyone writing about the queer past. The place of LGBTQ people in American society has changed so much that many of my students find it difficult to imagine a time